Hey, what's going on everyone? It's Caleb. In this video, we're going to talk about navigation with React. This is going to include reactrouter and working with links. So when you have a web page, you often have a consistent layout across pages. You can click the different links and it'll bring you to a new page and a new URL. You can do all of this with React without any page refreshes. So if you're wanting a single page application, however, you still want to have those different pages and to be able to navigate between them, this is the video for you. It'll also talk about how to pass information to these pages, such as a user ID, if you want to get more information about a particular user. So this will require some parameterization. We're going to talk about all of that in this video. Now, warning, we're not going to do CSS, so it's going to be pretty ugly. So we'll start off with a fresh create React app, and we'll just call this something like routing. Once that's done, we'll just open that folder. There we go. And now we'll open the terminal again and we'll say npm start. There we go. And by the way, this is the second React video I've done, so if you want a little bit more background, you can check out my previous video, which should get you up to speed with what we're doing if you're new. But pretty much we have that server running, so we should be able to go into source and app.js, and we can modify this to get whatever we want. So pretty much what we'll do is here, let me zoom out a little bit, just so we can see. I'm going to clear out this return and just return something very simple for right now, and then we'll talk about what we're going to be doing. So delete all that, and we'll just return an h1 saying my app. So you should be able to see that right away, my app. For some reason, I just get so annoyed with the default margin there, so I'm just going to go into index.css and get rid of that. That looks much better. But that's the end of my CSS journey for today, so we'll get back to what we're doing. And what we need to do now is we need to do a few different things. So the very first thing is we need to create pages. These are what show up when you click on a link on the website. So think of these as different components that will have their own stuff in them, and you're not really going to reuse these multiple times. They're just kind of dedicated for that one link. And these pages will need to be surrounded by a layout. The layout is going to have the actual links, so the visual on the page allowing you to click to visit the different pages. To wire that all up, we're going to need routing. So these are the different steps we need to complete, and there's a lot of little steps here, so just follow along the best you can, and I'll try not to make it super unorganized. No promises though. So the very first thing what I want to do is I want to create the layout. So we'll go into source, create a new folder. I'm just going to call it layout, and inside of here we'll create a file, layout.js. So this component is going to be used to surround everything in our page. So we'll say function layout, and then export default layout. Now this component is going to be used to display everything on the top of our web page. We'll just keep it simple with an unordered list. And inside of this unordered list, we'll have a few list items, one for the home page, and then another for, let's just say, users or whatever kind of data you want to keep. This is just an example. So that's the top of our web page. And then what we can do is we can tell it to render everything else. So to do that, what we do is we can just say inside of curly braces, props.children. And this is going to come from the props parameter we can define here. So props.children refers to everything inside of this layout. So the way we actually would use this component, I'll show you that back in app.js. First, what we'll do is we will import layout from /layout/layout. We can surround all of our code with a layout component. So it'll look like this. Layout, and then we'll take that closing tag and put that at the bottom. Clean things up a little bit, and lovely, there we go. We have one error here, and it says expected an assignment or function call. So what we need to do is need to go back into layout and just say return, and we want to return a single element, so we'll surround everything in a div. So we'll put that at the top and then after the children. All right, so the layout consists of a div with the unordered list for our links, just cleaning up there a little bit, and then everything else on our web page. That everything else is going to come from inside of these two layout tags, the opening and closing, this right here. So what we should be able to do is go back to our web page, and it's a little tiny, but you can see we have the unordered list and then an H1 saying my app. So it seems to be working on the formatting side. So what we need to do now is we need to create those page components for the home page and the users page. So instead of just rendering my app in directly here, we could actually have different pages. So to do that, we'll go into our files, and what we'll do now is we will create a new folder called pages. And then we'll start with the home page. So we'll say home.js, and this will just be called homepage, export default homepage, and we'll just return, let's just go with a div. We'll just say this is the home page. All right, so we got our home page component. I think it looks good. Let's go ahead and create another one for the users component. So users.js, function users, export default users, and we will return a div saying this is the users page. And actually want to put users page here. So there we go. We have users and home, and they look pretty similar. Okay, so we have those components, and what we could do is inside an app, we could just have those rendered here. So for example, we could say home, and this is going to be imported. So import home from pages home. And now what we should be able to do is see the home page, but still there's no navigation. So what we need to do is in order to not just have the home option, but also the users option, we need to do some routing. So routing is going to allow us to not only display home within our layout, but also display the users when appropriate. So what we need to do is we need to actually install something. So we'll close out of our server in the terminal, and we'll say npm install reactrouter DOM. This is going to give us all of the tools to create different URL paths and associate them with different component pages. So far, we're kind of all over the place, but we have the components, we have the layout to display the components inside. Now what we need to do is we just need to associate different URLs to a component. So if you visit the /, you get the home page. If you visit /users, you get the users page. Once we have that association, we'll be able to change the layout to actually link to those different pages. So let's get back into it and try to get this wired up using routing. So we'll have that installed, and you can find that installation inside of your package.json. So we have reactrouter DOM 621. Cool. So what we'll do now is we will import a few things from that. We're going to need 3 things, and this is all going to come from reactrouter DOM. So the first thing we're going to need is called browser router. We will also need routes and route. So we're going to make a structure using these 3 components, and this is all going to be defined within our layout so we can render different components depending on the URL. So to do this, we'll start by surrounding everything with browser router, and then inside of here, we're going to have routes. Now, this is where we actually define the different routes using a self-closed route. And inside of the route, we're going to have 2 attributes. The first is a path, and then the next is the element we want to render, which will be the component. So let's first define the path. This is just going to be a string, and we'll just start with a /, which is the home page. And then the element is going to be a rendered component, so we'll use curly braces and render the home page, and that's self-closing. All right, there we go. So at this point, we've added all this routing layers, but we haven't actually changed anything. We should still just be getting that home page when we visit the root directory. So what we'll do is we'll start our server back up, npm start, and you can see we still get the unordered list and the text saying this is the home page. But now we need to add the ability to visit /users to get the users page. So now we can just add a second route. So we'll say route. The path this time is going to instead be /users, and the element is going to be a different component. This time it's going to be the users page. So we'll render that as a self-closing component, and we will import that up here as well. So import users from /pages/users. All right, I think we're good. Pretty much now we can conditionally render a different thing depending on the URL. So let's go back to the web page, and now when we visit /users, we get this is the users page. If we visit just /, we get this is the home page. This is awesome. So we got the components and the URLs connected. Now we just need to create links to visit these different URLs. So if you remember in our layout, we had that unordered list with the different words saying home and users. We just need to make those into links. So let's go back to our layout and make these links. Now there's a few different ways you could do this. So the very first way is to create an anchor tag. And I'll show you that now. So we'll create an anchor. We'll surround this whole thing with the anchor tag, and we'll create an href pointing to the /. And that's the home page path. So let's check it out now. You can see we have this link, and we can click it. It takes us to that URL, and let's say we were on like the users page. You could go back to the home page clicking that button, and it takes us back to the home page. And this works. The downside is you actually get a page refresh, which we don't really want if we don't have to do. So I'm going to show you the React way of creating this link so that it's all within a single page application. So what you will do is you will replace this anchor tag with link and replace href with to, and then just update the closing tag as well. And this is going to need to be imported. So up at the top of the file, we will say import inside of curly braces link from reactrouter DOM. Let's check it out, make sure it works. Nope, it does not work. So let's take a look at the console. You'll see an error here, uncaught error, use href may be used only in the context of a router component. So the issue here is that we are using this link component from reactrouter DOM inside of the layout. However, this layout was rendered outside of the routes. So what we can do is we can just switch these around a little bit, put the browser router on the outside, clean it up a little bit. Let's save and see if that fixes it. And there we go. Do a quick refresh and you can see those errors go away. So that's a quick fix for that one. And we can check the homepage link. Seems to be working, but let's just go to that users page. Click back to the home page, and you can see there's no page refresh. Everything looks good. Now let's just do the same for the users page. We'll go back, go to the layout. We'll create a link and put the closing tag at the end and say where this is going to go to. This is going to be /users. And going back, you can see we have users and the home page. Everything seems to be working. So far so good. You've learned the basics of creating a layout and making the links go to the correct URLs which render components. So now what I want to do is I want to talk about how do you pass an additional piece of information to a link such as an ID if you wanted to get user details. So what we'll do is inside of users, we're just going to create some sample data. We'll just say users, and this is going to be a list of objects. So the first thing is we'll have an ID, and this will just be some number, and then we'll have a name. There's our first user. Let's create another user. We'll just go with something like Claire. And what we can do is we can render some information for each one of these users, such as a link to see all of their information. Right now we don't have a whole lot of information about them, but this concept will hold true for larger objects or if you're working with a database. So here's what we're going to do. we're going to return multiple things. So we'll just create the div surrounding everything. Let's make this just a paragraph. And then what we'll do is we will basically execute a function to display some HTML for each element. To do that, what we need to do is we need to say users.map. This is a function, and this takes the function we want to execute on each one of these elements. So we're just going to use an anonymous function, and we could create a link for each one of these. So we'll say link to. Now this is the part where we have to think about, where does this go? And I'm going to use curly braces to do some concatenation. So we'll start with slash plus. To get the actual user, we need a parameter here, user. So each iteration, it's going to grab one of these users and assign it to this user variable. So we'll just say user.id. And inside of what shows up, we'll just do the same exact thing, user.id. And it looks like I forgot to put something like const here, and we need to import link. Import link from reactrouter DOM. And this will need to be in curly braces. Okay, let's check that out, see what it looks like. We'll go to the users. Nothing's rendering right now. We actually will need to return this JSX so that it'll show up, and we get that first user ID followed by the second user ID right on the same line. So let's go ahead and surround this entire thing with an unordered list. There we go. And then we'll just make this a list item. So that way everything goes on its own line. Clean up the formatting, take a look, and there we go. We get the first user ID and the second user ID. Let's check the URLs. The first one will take us to users. Gotta fix that URL there. There we go. So that's what we want to prefix with. So let's go back to the users. We hit 542 and it takes us to users 542. So this would be your opportunity to show information about that specific user. We go back and we hit 43 and it takes us to user/43. This currently doesn't go anywhere because we haven't set that up in the routing. So what you can do is you can go and create a new route path. And this is going to be users/ and the way you parameterize it is with a colon ID. And let's just say this will render a user component, which we can create. So we'll say import user from .pages/user. And we'll go create that real quick. Pages, new file, user.js, function user page, export default user page, and we will return a paragraph saying user information. So let's check it out, make sure it works. All right, we're on the user 43 and it says user information. Now you just need to get that user information. So an example way you could do that is just to make a GET request to an API endpoint to get all the user information you need. The way you can get this value and use it inside of your page, that's what I'm going to show you next. So to do that, we're going to need an import. So we will say import. So this is called use params and comes from reactrouter DOM. And we will just say const params and assign it to use params invoked, which will return the parameter values. And then you can use those values to make any requests you need or display information on the page, such as params.id. And just to see what this looks like, we're just going to say console log params. And we'll also need to put this in curly braces if we actually want the information rendered. So there you go. You can see the value 43 shows up here. and this is defined as an object with an attribute ID of 43. Now this is going to be a string, so if you need to look up in a database by integer, then you might need to parse that to an integer, such as number.parseInt, and then pass in that ID. That is how you would convert it to a number. Alright, so there you go. That is a summary. We have the navigation, which goes to the different pages, no page refreshes, the ability to render a list, and then use parameters, pass in the URL, and get those on the page. Hopefully that was a decent summary. I'm still relatively new to React, so if you have any suggestions on improvements, please drop them in the comments section below. Hopefully we can make some more React web development videos here soon, so if you're interested, be sure to subscribe. And don't forget that notification bell. We've been posting videos 2 times a week, plus a short on Saturday, and so far it's been working out pretty well. So if you want to see more of this, I appreciate you joining me along for the journey. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.